Yeah, my name's Mike. I'm Canadian and traveled down from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, to have this the FLA procedure performed here with Dan Sperling. I had my procedure performed February 27th, 2017, and returned yesterday, which is August 17th. Roughly 6 months later for a follow-up exam and MRI, and thankfully the results were as best as we could have hoped for. There's absolutely no sign of cancer, the prostate cancer, which obviously was the treatment was for, and yeah, I couldn't be happier. I found out about my elevated PSA through a blood test that's incorporated in my annual medical checkup, which initially my doctor brought it to my attention when it was around a 6, and in looking back over the years, it had elevated in mid-2015 from a normal, it was 1.5 to 2, and went to a 6. I went back about 2 months later and it was a 7. So at that point he recommended a biopsy, which I followed up on and had done within a few weeks' time. And in Canada, the biopsy came back positive. In my case, there was cancer about 50 to 50% of my prostate, and obviously it had to look into the treatment. One of the options, aside from the typical radical surgery and or various types of radiation, I came across the FLA, or focused laser ablation, and Dan Sperling was at the top of that search as I got looking into that. And after weighing the odds and the positives and negatives, to me it was there was really no alternative for myself, as I wasn't a candidate for FLA due to my PSA being where it was at the time. I believe it was 7 after the biopsy was performed. It jumped a point. Preparing for the MRI, restrictive diet for the night before, literally, but it was minimal at best, and arrived in the morning. Pre-MRI performed in the morning. Consultation followed with Dan personally, Dan Sperling, where we discussed the procedure and actually viewed the MRI results, which you can clearly see the cancer cells, just as the biopsy had showed. In the afternoon, just after lunch, with the actual FLA, or focused laser ablation, which involves you being prone, in a prone position on a movable gurney or bed, I guess, within the MRI machine itself. Literally, the doctor's the gurney's moving around, and he's adjusting the laser to target the cells as required. That took approximately 2 hours. Very little, I would say not even little, there was no pain involved. Of course, it was somewhat obtrusive having this apparatus placed in my bowels, but aside from that, it's totally painless. Listening to music, the only thing required on my part was as Dan asked, and the technician, not to move, which I almost fell asleep, to be honest with you, during the procedure, and roughly 2 hours later it was done. Waited an hour or so for the results, and actually had a post consultation a couple hours later, just waiting at the clinic, which showed to be very positive, and there was no sign of any remaining cancer cells, which are evident as compared to the pre-operation. And literally, yeah, I returned to my hotel, went out, walked for supper that night. I was a little sore, I would say, in the prostate area, but nothing severe at all. And I'm glad to report that for myself, I have had literally no issues with incontinence or erectile dysfunction. I'm happy to report everything functioning as previous, and just no issues whatsoever. Being 58 years old, learning that I had cancer was, I remember that it's one of those moments in your life, I suppose, that where it's possibly life-altering or potentially. So I recall my doctor mentioning that I had cancer. In fact, in the follow-up to the biopsy, confirmed the suspicions, and needless to say that at that point, my mind started racing, you know, as to how am I going to get through this, and that with the FLA, or focused laser ablation, that it was the least invasive, and the one procedure that really has virtually no side effects, and I'm living testimony to that. And now after 6 months, to hear that the cancer's been literally obliterated, I feel I dodged a bullet as such. So my advice is to, you know, I was fortunate to catch it early, and I think that's the key, is to have those annual checkups and follow up with those, in this case the PSA, because really there is no other indicators. It kind of puts a new lease on life, I guess. You appreciate, you know, when you hear cancer, there's just so many, it involves almost all families, and I don't think you can speak to anyone that hasn't known someone personally that's had terrible consequences with cancer, including myself and my family. So of course you think of the worst when you hear that, and I'm just so happy that in this case, being a cancer survivor gives you a little more appreciation for life in itself, and enjoy it day to day as you go, because you just never know. So it's yeah, as I said to Dan today, keep up the good work, and literally he's performing miracles. I couldn't be happier with the results, and I'd recommend it to anyone that has the option.